Afternoon all. Here's an operator panel made by HSD, and its model number is NC410TFT. Now the problem with this operator panel is that the high voltage inverter for the backlight tubes had failed. This is the original one right here. It's also made by HSD. Its part number is PM47B. I didn't have enough time to where I could get me a new one, a replacement. And so I installed a suitable substitute. I had to finagle it in there. Let's look at the back side of the panel and I'll show you what I did. Here's the replacement high voltage inverter, and its part number is CXA-L0612A-VJL, made by TDK Lambda. Now here's the original, and it bolted down to two standoffs right here. What I did to mount this replacement high voltage switcher is I bolted it to a kit box cover with this screw and nut right here, and drilled two holes right here to mount the kit box cover to the standoffs. Now, that's pretty sturdy right there. Over here is the connection to the backlight tubes, and I'm bringing 12 volts DC from the control board onto the high voltage inverter through these two wires right here. There you go. Now when you don't have enough time to do the right job, or the correct job would be to order the right part, but when you don't have enough time, you've got to get this machine up and going. This is what you got to do sometimes. Good morning all. Today we're going to experiment with the high voltage switcher that drives and turns on CCFL tubes. I've got 5 volts coming in to this wire here and ground here. Pin 3, it's the middle pin. That's the enable. That's what turns this high voltage switcher on and off. And I've got it jumped up to 5 volts so that it's always enabled. So when I apply 5 volts to this circuit board right here, this tube will turn on. There's also a 12 volt version of this high voltage switcher, and that's the one that I used, the 12 volt version, to repair the HSD Operator Panel. I've applied 5 volts to the circuit, and the CCFL tube is glowing. Now I'm going to show you a little trick that I've used quite a bit. Let me turn the intensity up on this scope. Let's get positioned right here. Okay. Now, if you ever want to know if your high voltage switcher is working or not, and you don't have a high voltage probe, you can wave a scope probe over this circuit right here. Now don't touch it. It will damage your scope if you touch that high voltage. But you can see as I get closer and closer, that waveform on the screen grows larger this waveform right here is of a working unit. If you were to wave your oscilloscope probe over this connector right here and you did not see any waveform, that means that your switcher is not turned on. It's either not working because it's broke, or the enable is not pulled high. Isn't that amazing? I'm going to turn power off. Let me make sure we're off here. I'm going to disconnect the ground side so we're not connected to the power supply. And I'm going to disconnect that CCFL tube. Set that aside and we'll look what the waveform looks like. It's more of a sine wave now. Let me spread that out a little bit. It's more of a sine wave now because there's no load on that connector. Let's get closer to that oscilloscope right there so you can see what's going on. This is the waveform with the CCFL tube disconnected from the high voltage switcher. And that look nice. Now don't touch that pin with your probe. Your scope will not work afterwards. Oh, okay. There we are. We calculate the frequency also. Spread that out a little bit more. Now, we're not going to be exact, and we're going to use our calculator. But here we have 1, 2, 3 time divisions. Let's see where our scale is set to. And we're at 5 microseconds. That's for a total of 15 microseconds. 1 over 15 microseconds. Get out my calculator. If my phone's calculator is correct, that frequency is 66 kilohertz. Now you'll notice that I have this board set on cardboard. You don't want to set this down on your static mat. Static mat will conduct that high voltage. Here, and just wave this over that connector. Don't touch those pins of that connector. I can't say that too much because your scope will not work after that. Alright, there you go, folks. Hope you all enjoyed that video right there. Experimenting with the high voltage switcher for the CCFL tube. Thank you very much for coming by and seeing what we're working on next. Have a good day, folks. Have a good day out there. We'll see you next time.